What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my banner review and unit review of the new mythic that we have got, Seiros, and also all of the units present on this banner. I'll be going over the build options for her, I'm going to be speculating her stats and what I think she's probably going to be having stat spread of, and also build options for pretty much every single unit present on this banner. These videos do take quite a bit of time to make, so if you do end up enjoying these, I would really appreciate if you could pretend that you are Seiros and the like and subscribe button is Nemesis and you could hit them as hard as she did, so that would be much appreciated. With that said, let us begin. So she is a blue infantry dragon and she's an anima mythic unit. She is the new type of mythic unit which actually opens up a slot in Aether Raid's defense, similar to how Regan allowed you to use a 6th unit in Aether Raid's offense. So she pretty much opens up the 7th slot in Aether Raid's defense if you do use her. So that is going to be her mythic effect, and she does give you the stats if your units are anima blessed and Aether Raids. So she is pretty much going to be having the same blessing as Duma, giving you that +3 attack, which is going to be useful for killing the enemies, of course. So she has got Aurora Breath as her weapon. She is not using her Seiros sword or Seiros shield or anything like that. Instead of making her another red mythic or legendary unit, they decided to make her a blue unit. So she is a dragon with Aurora Breath as her preferred weapon. This gives her +3 attack on top of her already really high attack stat, which I think that she's going to be having. This gives her a lot of power in my opinion. So if she initiates combat in the player phase, she can get +6 attack during the combat and she gets a guaranteed follow-up attack. And in the enemy phase, if the foe initiates combat against her, then she gets +6 defense and resistance during combat and the foe cannot make a follow-up attack. And of course it has got the standard adaptive damage. So this breath is really good. Of course it is invalidated by null follow-up, but it does help her function in both phases, as a player phase unit and as a enemy phase unit. So that is pretty great for Aether Raid's defense. Flexibility is definitely going to be appreciated in that kind of regard, especially when she is a melee range unit. Melee range units are usually rather honest, especially when it comes to mythics like Sothis and Lif, so they need a lot of extra stuff to make them viable and to make them as a threat. So this breath does give her some nice player phase and enemy phase potential. She's got Glacis as her special. Mirror Impact pretty much allows you to stop the follow-up attacks of the enemies in the player phase. With her slotted skill and weapon, she basically tries to stop your follow-up attack in both phases. In the player phase, she does get the guaranteed follow-up attack, which does make it a bit better because she's going to be extremely slow, so that really helps her player phase potential. She comes with Dragon Wall as a new line of skill for dragon units. I believe that this is probably going to be restricted to dragon infantry units because that's the infantry class is basically the class which has got a lot of the damage reduction skills. So this is basically same as the close call repel type of damage reduction skills, however it works on resistance, and I think that's a bit better for some of the dragons which have really high resistance or can just stack up their resistance, because on average a lot of the units are not really going to be having that high of a resistance in the game compared to their defense or their speed, and resistance is something that is easy to win on if you're facing like offensive units who have low bulk but really high offenses. So against them you're always going to be getting the max damage reduction. So resistance based damage reduction does have its merits, and this is definitely a new tool which dragons can use, and Seiros herself can use this really well as well because of her high resistance. She also has an exclusive slotsy skill in Wings of Light. So it basically gives the mythic heroes during turns 1 through 5 some extra stats, and it depends on which turn you're on. So as you could see here, on turn 1 you're gonna be able to get like +3 to all of the stats of those mythic units. Keep in mind that these stats are only given to the mythic units, so we're talking about Mirabilis, Thrasir, Duma, Lif, stuff like that, the mythic units present there. And for many cases like Mirabilis, she doesn't really care about these kinds of stat buffs. She's there to dance basically as a support unit, unless you use her with like Wings of Mercy and something like Brave Sword or something like that. But in most cases, like Mirabilis is not going to be able to make use of this. Thrasir is someone who can definitely get scary. So on turn 1 she has +3 to all of her stats, which is really good for a nuke like her. And for Lif, getting extra bulk, extra attack and speed is always really good because many times he could be used as a frontliner. Duma also appreciates this, especially the attack stat, and usually many players try to attack on turn 3 because that's when your bolt tower goes off and the enemy gets weakened. So on turn 3, she's going to be able to provide +5 stats to all of those mythic units, which can be really great. So the main thing about mythic units on defense is that they're not able to get any kind of extra stats. So basically Seiros is able to provide them with extra stats, and this can be really scary, especially when you're facing someone like Thrasir, who can already just nuke so many things with killing intent and her weapon, and even Duma in his bonus season, where he could be proved to be annoying, especially if you take longer to attack them. So at max this could give +7 to all of the stats of the mythics, and at minimum on turn 1 this is going to be giving you +3, which is actually not that bad. So this is a pretty unique slotsy skill which does help the mythic units. So it really depends on what mythic units you're running. If you're just using Seiros and Miraculous, then of course Wings of Flight isn't really going to be giving you any kind of help, and you're much better off running some other skills. But if you're running someone like Thrasir, Duma, Liv, then yes, this skill can definitely help them. And here she's going to be getting the damage reduction from this Lance Cavalier, and she also triggers her Glacies. So using this I could calculate what her resistance are, and by having the 2 attacks here I could also calculate what her attack stat is and also what her defense is going to be. So this is going to be my speculation and my build options and overall review now. So I think Seiros is going to be having a stat spread similar to this. She is going to be having extremely high attack stat at base 42, which is further boosted by her weapon, which gives her +3 attack stat, and overall she's going to be hitting very hard. She is a very hard hitting unit, and she's also going to be having 39 resistance and 37 defense. She's going to be extremely slow. She's basically looking like a blue Milla essentially with her stat spread. I'm quite sure this is the stat spread that she's going to be ending up having. High defense, resistance, low speed, and definitely a really good attack stat. And now I'm going to be taking a look at what Seiros brings to the table as a mythic unit in Aether Raid's defense, because mythic units have increased their value ever since the change to Aether Raids, where you have to have a bonus mythic unit if you want to have even more reduced lift. It is going to be giving you -20 lift essentially if you have the bonus mythic on defense for that week. So that's why many people do like to have all of the mythic units in their collection so that they can just have them in the rotation. So it's important to keep in mind what kind of units she's going to be facing on offense. On offense, we have got Astro Mythics like Plumeria, Naga, Regin, and also Altina. So Altina's Twin Blades can pierce through the damage reduction of a Dragon Wall. So that is something that you have to keep in mind. Altina will not really care about the damage reduction with that special. Naga does give you Divine Fang, which means that any kind of ally of Naga can have effective damage against Seiros. However, it is important to keep in mind that if you build her up properly, then she can even take something like Sather Shell from Regin, which is going to be a pre-charged special, and she will not get doubled by Regin. So in many cases she can actually survive Regin, and in many cases she can checkmate stuff like Plumeria, Regin, or even Altina, because all of them are red mythics. So being blue color does have its advantage. She doesn't really compete with any kind of other anima mythic unit of that color, and that is really good. Now, it is important to keep in mind that she also enables the 7th slot. If you go into the game and go into the help, then it pretty much says and tells you what the 7th slot will do. So after you add her onto her team, you're going to be having another slot open for Aether Raid's defense, and you could add a unit in your 7th slot. The unit who's present in the 7th slot will not move until a unit from your Aether Raid's defense team dies, which means that this could ideally be a unit like Iago, Versa, Veld, or someone like that who can just stay in corner and debuff the enemy in a global range. They're not going to be able to teleport with something like Wings of Mercy or anything like that. So you could basically use units like that, and Seiros herself is actually a pretty good unit in the 7th slot because she can just stay in like a corner or away and not really do anything, and then when she's going to be the last unit left, she could prove to be a problem for some of the mythics, as I said. So Seiros herself can be a pretty nice 7th slot unit. However, just keep in mind that whenever she's going to be in her bonus season, she cannot be used in the 7th slot. You will have to use her from slots 1 to 6 because in the bonus slot, they do not really contribute to your scoring. So that's why if you want to have -40 lift with like Seiros in her bonus season, make sure to use her in slots 1 to 6. And then when she's not the bonus, then she could act as a 7th slot unit, and basically she can be a free unit on your defense team as a 7th slot unit. So she does work out in that sense, and many people are going to be appreciating that. In general, as I said before, infantry melee units have it a bit hard, as a mythic unit like Lif or Sothis, because they don't have as much threat as someone like Bramimond, Thrasir, or dancers Mirabilis or Triandra, who can provide that kind of support. Instead, they have to struggle a bit because of their melee range, and here she also has the dragon weakness, but still in my opinion Seiros can still pack a punch because of her high attack stat, and because she can function in both phases, it does make it a bit better for her, and she can also stop the follow-up attacks of the enemies. She's a good unit, but I don't think she's as good as someone like Mirabilis or a must-have like that. In my personal opinion, Thrasir, Mirabilis are still the better Anma mythic units. She's definitely better than Lif for sure. Depending on how you use Duma, if you really depend on Duma for destroying bolt towers and healing towers of the opponents, then of course Duma is going to be giving you that value. But Seiros can also function as a Wings of Mercy unit like many times Duma is used, and she can also double in the player phase while still having Wings of Mercy, which is not something Duma can do. So she can definitely nuke pretty hard as a Wings of Mercy nuker. And that is something that many people are gonna be using her for, honestly. And a good thing for Seiros is that there is no resistance boosting Astro Mythic as of right now. We do have Air in the Light Season who can boost resistance, but we do not have anyone who can do that in the Astro Season, so her damage reduction skill is a bit better because it's harder to stack resistance on offense. So her damage reduction skill does become a bit more useful. I would usually say something like this at the end of the video, but I really want to say it now because I know many people do drop out after watching the review of the newest unit. So if you're thinking of getting Seiros, then do consider, does your defense team really need her? If you can spare some orbs, then sure, she can just be a free 7th unit in your Aether 8's defense team. And whenever it is going to be a bonus season for her, then she can of course help you in the lift loss reduction. And something like that could be important to many people because of how the bonus mythics are rotating. So that could help you in the lift loss reduction. If you're not really thinking about that, then you could definitely wait a bit because the anniversary is right around the corner. We might get the Choose Your Legends 4 Hero Fest or maybe some other event. And it's also important to keep in mind that a Hero Rises event also happens usually at the time of this year. Now, I just want to make this clear, I'm not saying that you should vote for Seiros or anything like that, but last year, Altina did win a Hero Rises event, and she was also a mythic unit, and she wasn't even as popular as Seiros. Seiros is literally in the opening cutscene of Three Houses, so she is much more popular. Again, I'm not saying this that you should vote for her or something like that. I'm just stating this as a possibility. So if you really care about her, depends if you want to wait for the anniversary or if you really want to get her. Now, when it comes to her build, Mirror Impact is pretty decent actually on budget, and even Fury could help you. But in my opinion, Distant Counter can definitely give you really good results, especially as a mixed phase unit. So she can use Distant Counter on Quick Riposte and basically double in the enemy phase while not getting doubled herself with Aurora Breath, so that could help you. Either its defense skills are also really helpful with a well-made defense team that protects your structures. Fortress Defense Res is also an option that can increase her bulk for both phases. Push skills and unity skills are also an option, and I would lean more towards attack defense push and attack defense unity. Even though her damage reduction works on resistance, the reason why I lean towards those defensive based skills is because most of the offensive carries are going to be physical units. Many of the sword tanks, axe tanks, dagger units, stuff like that, they all hit defense. So that's why having more defense is going to be helping against them. For slot B, Dragon Wall is a decent option, but you could always use her as a Wings of Mercy nuke and she will pack a punch. That is for sure with her high attack stat. Lull attack resistance, ruse, and sabotage are also options if you want to use her with that kind of expensive skills. Guard is also another budget option if you're using something like Hooker Post, can basically stop Gale Force of like Regan or something like that. Wings of Light of course does make someone like Thrasir pretty threatening, but if you don't really want to use Thrasir or if you don't really care about the skill, then Panic Smoke or Time Pulse could be used. Time Pulse could be used with Iceberg to make it a 2-turn special or even pre-charge one of her specials, so that could be done. For Sacred Seal, Quick Riposte is definitely going to be an option that you could use to double, because she only gets the auto follow-up attack in the player phase, not in the enemy phase as you saw from the trailer. So you could use that. You could also use Quicken Pulse for a pre-charge special. Phantom Resistance could work out with her damage reduction, it does help with that. And if you're using a Sabotage skill, then it definitely helps with that as well. Bond skills can work with a Wings of Mercy build. Hardy Bearing is always pretty good to check some of the Vantage units, and she does have pretty respectable bulk, so with the damage reduction skills and stuff like that, Hardy Bearing does make a pretty good option for her, and you could always use support skills like Drives or Distant Guard. So overall, Seiros is good, but not to the level of Thrasir or Mirabilis, obviously. Her fodder is also pretty nice in Mirror Impact, which you could fodder her for, or Dragon Wall. Now, you could inherit both of these skills to a unit, but there are not really many dragons who would use Mirror Impact and Dragon Wall at the same time. So that's why I've given her 4 out of 5, mainly because of her impact skill, which is going to be universally useful. Dragon Wall isn't even useful by many of the dragon units themselves, unless they have really nice resistance, or you could stack it up. If you want to fodder her for Dragon Wall, then here are some of the example on free-to-play merge-friendly dragons. Someone like Enna can just go with a enemy face build, just stack up a resistance and run Quick Riposte Sacred Seal. Noe can decently stack up some speed so that she will not require Quick Riposte, and Speed Res Solo is an option that you could run. And because of Speed Res Solo and the extra stats that she gets from Purifying Breath, she pretty much ends up at 50 plus resistance, which is pretty good. And Kana could also use this with maybe something like Lightning Breath, so you have got something like Attack Speed Solo, which can really increase his offenses, while also using Phantom Resistance in combination with Dragon Wall for that damage reduction. Res Smoke can also just help you with the damage reduction skill, as well as doing more damage to the opponent, so Res Smoke is a pretty good option on a budget. And finally, Faye could also use this. She does have pretty good resistance. Even if you go with the speed-oriented Faye, this could still work out for you because Eternal Breath does inflict -4 resistance debuff on the foe, and you can also run something like Swiss Dance. So any kind of route could be used if you want to just go with the speedy route, or if you want to go with the tanky route with using Quick Riposte Sacred Seal. Legendary Dimitri is an atrociously strong unit. He is one of the best lance units in the entire game, and Irid Bar is such a strong weapon, giving him -1 special cooldown, and it's such an easy condition to activate where he could get +5 to all of his stats, and it also gives him speed-based damage reduction built into his weapon, which is really amazing. His preferred skill is just as strong. Atrocity gives him true damage, 25% based off his attack stat, and that is really strong. He can even deal with some of the green units with his true damage, and not only that, Atrocity also has Omni Smoke built into it, and also Pulse Smoke. Damage reduction is the new hip thing, so Dimitri can of course do that pretty easily with his high speed and the damage reduction built into his weapon, and even outside of that he can hit pretty hard and overall be really deceptively bulky because of the damage reduction, as well as doing insane amounts of damage with that true damage as well as his already high attack stat. He does have some pretty good fodder and sturdy impact. Hot Tempest is also a pretty unique skill that you could fodder him off for, but in my opinion, only few units can really appreciate this over like the Joint Drive skills or like Rain skills and stuff like that, because in Slot C we do have some competition now. Hot Tempest only works on the odd turns, so it can be a bit inconsistent, so there are not really too many units who would really like to desperately get this. This is of course a really good option to have, but not a must-have on any kind of unit in my personal opinion. So he does bring some really good value as a fodder, and of course he's a very strong unit. Unfortunately, you would have to give him something like Distant Counter, which can really help him just be a tank. Sturdy Impact just limits him to the player phase. Legendary Julia is a very hard-hitting mage with her high attack stat and Virtuous Naga. However, one problem that she has is that she doesn't have any kind of reliable way of doubling. Her speed is middling, and only at high investments you can go with the speed-based Julia with something like Attack Speed Solo or Push, which I have seen in Arena, and that is very scary to face. But unlike Fallen Julia, she doesn't really get a guaranteed follow-up attack from her weapon, so she pretty much depends on one-shotting units in her player phase, and in the enemy phase she requires something like Quick Riposte. So that is mainly Julia's drawback, but overall she can be a pretty nice mage tank with her resistance and the fact that she can hit really hard as a nuke, and of course having the dragon effective damage is going to be helping you many times in stuff like Arena Assault or in general in the game's content, because we do have some pretty bulky dragons. So dragon effective damage is always going to be proving to be useful along with a high attack stat. You could inherit Mirror Impact and Attack Res Oath at the same time, so this banner has got 3 impacts on the blue color. Sturdy Impact on Dimitri and Mirror Impact on Julia as well as Seiros. So if you're looking to give any of your units impacts, then blue is the color you should absolutely aim for. Even though not doubling can be a bit of problem for Julia, Mirror Impact can at least stop the follow-up attacks in the player phase, and Light and Dark overall is a very good exclusive skill, which is basically like Omni Lull effect, and it also nullifies the adaptive damage of the dragon, so it makes her even better against dragons, and the visible buffs of any kind of foes doesn't really matter to Julia. So it's a very good preferred slot B skill. In my opinion, at higher investments, Speedy Julia is the scariest one to face honestly, but not many people can really go after her, but still she can work pretty well on a budget as well. Flayn is one of the best healers in the entire game because of the support that she brings, and being a flyer unit, she also has really good mobility. So she does have Caduceus Staff, which basically gives damage reduction of 30% to any kind of allies within 2 spaces, and it also has Wrathful Staff built into it. This allows Flayn to be one of the best support units in the entire game, giving damage reduction to already such insanely powerful units like Brave Hector, and even support tanky mages, which her competition Brave Lucina cannot really do. So she ends up being a very solid support unit, and even outside of that, she brings Rescue to the table, which is a very unique healing drawback skill. Now with Rescue and Winter Bernadetta, a whole Pandora's box is open for many strategies, but Rescue in general is such a good movement skill for healers, and it's something new that we have got, so it just increases her value by so much. So she's got some excellent fodder options, especially for healers. She has got Rescue and the Bomb skill. Whenever Flayn is mentioned, I feel like it's really important to go over the fact that damage reduction is calculated multiplicatively. So if you're using her with a unit who can also have 40% damage reduction skill, then it is going to be multiplicative and not additive. So I just want to go over that. Overall, Flayn is just a very solid colorless option on this banner, and probably the strongest one for many people. Ariana Grande is still a very solid unit in my personal opinion. Lifiaberg is still a quite solid weapon, and its self-recall damage can actually be used productively, especially in something like Aether Raid's offense for setting up Gale Force teams, usually by using a strategy called Air Force, where you just run Fury, Disarm Trap, Lifiaberg, and within 2 combats you are going to be falling into the range of Wings of Mercy for your allies like Peony and other Gale Force units. And if you just ditch Lifiaberg and go with a budget option like Temari Plus, then she can also act as a really good support unit because she has got nice resistance, and Phantom Resistance Sacred Seal really pairs up well with her. She's one of the best users of Disarm Trap in the entire game in my personal opinion, because she can use that to snipe many of the units, and she can also use that outside of an Air Force team just as a support to just go over traps and destroy the structures and make more space for your team. Her passive skill Sparkling Boost can be a really good skill to give some passive healing to allies every single turn, and even outside of Aether Raid, she's a very solid unit even for the other content in the game. You guys see me use her all the time in my free-to-play guides. Unfortunately for her fodder, Mystic Boost has fallen in the value because it's available as a Sacred Seal now, so there is really not a lot of reason for you to run Mystic Boost in Slot B, especially when Slot B is such a competitive skill. The only class of units which Slot B is not very competitive for is probably Flyers. Mythic merges are always going to be appreciated, especially if you take Aether Raid's offense seriously, and more Mythic merges just means that you're going to be scoring better, going to be having better ranks. So if you're someone like that who cares about it in Vault of Heaven, then air merges are definitely going to be pretty nice, and colorless pool isn't really all that bad this time around. Legendary Elm is still a pretty powerful unit because of Luna Arc and his offensive stat spread. Luna Arc can basically give him true damage that can scale based off the defense of the opponents, so he can definitely face a lot of tanky units and deal with them. Lunar Flash is also a really good special that can scale based off his speed as well, and it's a 2-turn special, so that makes it really convenient. And Luna Arc doesn't really give him extra stats like many of the other weapons we have right now, but that's not to say that he's a weak unit by any means. That just goes to show you how hard the power creep has been going in the game. But still, he's still a quite strong unit, and he can function as a fodder because of null follow-up. Darting Blow 4 isn't really that good of a skill, honestly. It's probably one of the worst tier 4 skills, honestly speaking. There are just better options, but null follow-up and Darting Blow 4 still could be inherited at the same time. It's not the worst inheritance option, and especially with all of these cheating weapons that can give you auto follow-ups and stuff like that, null follow-up just has its value increasing over the time. Thrasir is a very strong anima defense mythic unit, only second to Mirabilis, and Mirabilis is also not an offensive threat. She's mainly really good for support, and Thrasir is really good offensive unit because of her preferred weapon that can give her extra stats. Also has Dragon Effectiveness, which is especially really useful against someone like Naga, and the fact that it can neutralize effects that guaranteed foes follow-up attacks like Quick Riposte and stuff like that is also really strong. Killing Intent is just as strong of a Slot B skill, which can pretty much give her Conditional Desperation, a pseudo brave effect in a sense, and it's really easy to activate because it just needs a penalty on the foe, which is quite easy to do right now in the game, or it requires the foe not to be at full HP. So if you use her with someone like Duma, then right from the start, Killing Intent is going to be active. Overall, a really nice mage unit and also a pretty nice anima defense mythic. Her fodder is also pretty good with Flashing Blade 4 and Panic Smoke. Panic Smoke is mainly useful in Aether Raid's defense itself, so many of the units can utilize this, and Flashing Blade 4 can be utilized by fast units, and they can also get true damage out of this skill. Dieck is a pretty decent axe infantry unit. We do have quite a bit of competition when it comes to axe units, and also when it comes to axe infantry units, we even have competition in the free-to-play pool with someone like Ninja Hana. So he does have a preferred weapon in Tiger Roar Axe, which does give you -1 special cooldown, which makes him a pretty nice Gale Force user actually. It also gives him a guaranteed follow-up attack, and also +5 to all of his stats, which are pretty easy conditions to meet overall. So he can function in both phases essentially because of the guaranteed follow-up attack, but his speed is in a really awkward position where he would like to increase it a bit so that he could prevent the doubles from foes in the enemy phase, and having it higher also means that even if he's not able to get his guaranteed follow-up attack, he can still double naturally. Unfortunately, in a time where units can just get guaranteed follow-up attacks just for existing, Dieck has got two conditions which he needs to meet if he wants to get the guaranteed follow-up attack, and that's why I said his speed can be in a really awkward position, but investing into it can definitely prove to be useful. He has got two tier 4 skills which you can inherit at the same time, which is absolutely insane when it comes to its value for arena scoring. That is really good, and null follow-up is, again, as I said, it's a really good skill when there are so many cheating skills around. So it's pretty easy to inherit null follow-up or one of the tier 4 skills, or just inherit both of the tier 4 skills if you're using him to fodder off to some kind of arena project. Yune has it a bit tough because we just got Triandra who can give speed blessing as well, and Triandra is a dancer who can support units, and she can also hit hard because of her offensive stat spread and also double naturally with her speed. So it does make it a bit annoying for someone like Yune. Yune does need quite a bit of investment if she really wants to be good. On a budget, she's not the greatest dark mythic unit to be used, but she's certainly better than someone like Sothis in my personal opinion. At the very least, Chaos Manifest is a pretty easy weapon to trigger because it just needs any kind of penalty on the opponent, which is quite easy to do in Ether 8's defense, so it's pretty easy to activate and get the guaranteed follow-up attack. But she's extremely frail unit, and if you want to make her super good, then you would need some premium fodder and stuff like Sturdy Impact or Ground Orders. She can exist as a flying unit to provide the Ground Orders buff, which is pretty helpful, but then again, Triandra does exist. But because we have rotating bonus seasons right now for every defensive mythic, she can definitely get some value if you don't already have her, and if you would like to have a bonus mythic unit. Her fodder is extremely lackluster. Sabotage resistance is quite a niche skill compared to sabotage speed or sabotage attack, which is much more universally useful. In a very stacked competition of sword infantry units, Catherine comes with her Thunderbrand, which can definitely be a pretty good weapon in player phase, and she can function as a Gale Force unit pretty good, and because of the fact that it can stop skills which stop her follow-up attack, she can also utilize something like Wind Sweep. However, unfortunately, because she doesn't get a -1 special cooldown from her weapon like Fallen Marita, if you want to run a 4-turn Gale Force, then you pretty much need Quicken Pulse or Time Pulse. So that could make it a bit worse, but still she could function pretty decently well as a Gale Force unit, and she can definitely be a really strong unit in player phase. Sadly, that is where her downfall lies. Many of the sword units are just very flexible. They can function in both phases. Catherine can also do something similar, but she will of course need quite a bit of investment to do that, and from her base kit alone, she's mainly going to be stuck in the player phase role. Still, nonetheless, she is a strong unit because of Thunderbrand, the conditional desperation that it gives, and also the fact that it can allow her to use stuff like Wind Sweep, and also Pierce through effect, which can stop her follow-up attacks. Her fodder is really excellent. She provides Swift Sparrow 3 and Loud Speed defense, which you could inherit at the same time, and that is just absolutely amazing for any kind of physical, fast player phase based unit, so her fodder is extremely good. In my Ether 8's defense team, last year I've used Lift quite a bit for months, and I can definitely say that he's pretty much the worst Anima Mythic unit in the game. He does not have the utility of Duma of destroying bolt towers and stuff like that, and neither he's as offensively threatening as Thrasir or provides support like Miraculous, and now we even have Seiros, who's an Anima Mythic unit that can provide you with mixed phase utility and can give even more stats to the Mythics, but still, even after that, Liv is still a pretty strong unit because of his weapon and his slot B skill. It's just that he doesn't really perform as good in Ether 8's defense, but outside of that, he's a very good and fun unit to use honestly. And the self-recall damage from his preferred weapon can actually help set up many of the skills, but it can definitely hurt you many times in something like Ether 8's defense. So not a very impressive unit for the mode that he was made for, but definitely pretty nice outside of that. He simply lacks the bulk for a frontliner, and he doesn't really have the threatening amount of power as someone like Thrasir, for example, and neither the utility or support of the other mythics. His fodder is extremely good, giving distant counter and time pulse is absolutely incredible when those two skills are just so universally useful. So really amazing fodder, as you could inherit both of these skills at the same time. Legendary Roy does have a preferred weapon that can give him distant counter and also dragon effectiveness, which is really good, but unfortunately it is the class of the sword infantry units, and we just have so much more powerful units, like for example Fallen Ike, who also has distant counter built into his weapon, and an effect which is really insane, the unity effect basically. So unfortunately he does face quite a bit of competition. With max investment, he can definitely be a pretty strong unit because of the distant counter present in his weapon, and that just opens up the slotted skill to many of the really useful skills that we have got. As for fodder, he unfortunately only has bonus doubler, which is a pretty niche skill. Most of the time, only units which have got distant counter built into their weapon can utilize bonus doubler, and panic is a pretty common thing, and also lull skills, which does make the effective value of bonus doubler a bit shaky in many scenarios. So it is a pretty niche skill honestly overall, and not really many people are gonna be just foddering him for bonus doubler because it's not really that valuable for most of the units. Overall, blue color is the strongest color present on this banner, and after that I would say that colorless and green are a bit tied. Depends on what you value. If you value Thrasir and the fodder of Dieck, then probably green color, but if you value Flayn and our support and the mythic merges on air, then definitely colorless. But overall, red is probably the worst color. It does have good fodder in Liv and Catherine, but not many people are going to be pulling on that. Blue color is really fantastic for sure. Again, I have to say that the 4th anniversary is right around the corner, and we're probably going to be getting some kind of a channel on 1st or 2nd February, so that will be revealing some more banners that we're going to be getting, so you could hold up to that point and then spend your orbs, especially if you're a free-to-play player. And as for how useful and worth Seiros is for summoning, I went over that in my Seiros section. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Please be sure to share this video with your friends or any kind of people who are trying to summon on this banner and are trying to summon for Seiros. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support, and if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are gonna be as slow as Seiros. So that's it, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.